Man, Rafael Nadal retired. Oh my God. all my tennis favorites are going away. I really don't think we'll ever see a trio like Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic again. We've had different male tennis players groupings that worked, right? You had, John McEnroe and Jimmy Connors and Arthur Ashe and Bjorn Borg. You had that era. You had Sampras and Agassi and Chang, Yannick Noah. You had that era. But Federer, Nadal, and Joker is a totally different era. Probably the best era of all the men's eras. Because they all typed each other. They all took over the Grand Slam record from each other, which is just amazing, right? So, first of all, shout out to Rafael Nadal, one of the greatest tennis players ever. Power, speed. The thing that ruined him is injuries. Like, injuries hurt Federer, but it hurt Nadal quicker. Because Nadal should still be kind of battling Joker for the most Grand Slams, but the past few years he just couldn't do it. So let's go back in time. Shout out to Pete Sampras. So when Pete Sampras retired, he held the men's Grand Slams title with 14. And sometimes Pete Sampras is almost to me like Ivan Lendl, where Ivan Lendl was just out there just killing everybody and nobody was paying attention. Ivan Lendl was that dude, right? It was like Boris Becker was around that time period too, but Lendl was that guy. And then Sampras popped up with Agassi and that crew. And Sampras was almost like Lendl, where he was just knocking dudes out, but he was so low key where Sampras had the hair and he's dating Brooke Shields and Barbra Streisand. Like, he had all this high profile stuff, but Sampras just going out there doing work. He was just going out there doing work. And even though Agassi was great, when he got to the bald headed Agassi, that's when he kind of really knuckled down. And he became like a lot more consistent. But Sampras was just doing work, so he retires. So right before he retires, that's when Federer pops up. And Federer was like that young dude on the rise. And like Sampras, once Federer became number one, he was just knocking dudes out. There was he had no competition. The difference between Federer and Sampras was Federer had a lot more flair. He looked like he was a model type. He had great hair, smile, ladies loved him. So he had this whole LL Cool, ladies love Federer Cool James type vibe to him. But he was just knocking dudes out. No competition, just knocking dudes out, winning Grand Slams. And I felt like, man, is anybody going to beat this dude? Then Rafa shows up. And at first Federer he had the best of them. But once Rafa figured out, they were just going back and forth. And by the time Federer slowed down and he retired, Federer had the Grand Slam titles. He had 20 men's Grand Slam titles. Now Sampras had 14. Federer had 20. So Rafa was still out there. He was still playing. But even as Federer was getting kind of banged up, Rafa started getting banged up too. But he was still kind of winning Grand Slams. And then eventually Rafa wins. He bests Federer with 22 Grand Slams. But in the background, so you got Federer and Nadal just going back and forth, battling. Over here is Joker. Is Djokovic. Djokovic is just, he was always like number 3. He was always like, it's almost like he was George Harrison to Federer and Nadal being Lennon McCartney. And there's always those times in the Beatles where George Harrison says, I got a song for you. And Lennon McCartney said, no, rewrite the songs. Get away from us. And that's how Federer and Nadal was. It was almost like, there's Joker. Have fun. Number 3. But then because they both started slowing down and got hurt, Joker got better because he was like, man, it's just like, man, I'm number 3, but I should be number 1. And then Joker got up in there. And then once in a while he would beat Federer, and sometimes we beat Nadal. And then he became number 1. And Joker was that dude. And now Joker has the Grand Slams title at 24. Like, if you ask the average tennis, like just a casual tennis playing fan, who holds the men's Grand Slam record, they'll probably still say Federer. Because Federer's still out there. Like, he doesn't play anymore, but we heard his name for so long, and you still see him from time to time. I'll say, oh yeah, it's probably Federer. It's like, no. And they might go to Nadal. But Joker is never thought of that way. Because I think in a lot of ways, because of Federer and Nadal, Joker to them is always number 3. Even though, which is a good question, like who's the greatest tennis player of all time? Is it Federer, Nadal, or Joker? Well, right now, Joker has the most Grand Slam titles. You would say, well, it got to be Joker, right? But I think just by perception, I think people probably point to a Federer or Nadal, just because of this whole George Harrison, Paul McCartney, John Lennon thing, where George Harrison, after the Beatles broke up and went off, he was tremendous. But if you rank them as talents, you say, oh, it's by Lennon, McCartney, Lennon, then George, right? But man, Nadal though, man, those 3 guys, we'll never see a trio again like this ever again. There'll be other men's tennis players who will be very competitive, and they'll battle each other and do really well. And most likely, they'll probably be more like Sampras and Agassi and Becker and Lendl, that whole time period. They'll probably be kind of like them, right? But I doubt we'll see 3 guys who are ranked 1, 2, 3 in the world like they were at some point. And then you could argue that one of those 3 might be the greatest tennis players ever. So what do you think? Have you ever seen Rafael Nadal play in person? Have you ever been to a Grand Slam final? Wimbledon, French Open, any of these big ones? Tell me what it's like if you ever experienced that. Do you play tennis? Like my mom, when me and my brother was kids, she tried to get us to play tennis. And I actually liked tennis. But, that's when Arthur Ashe was still alive. My mom was like a female Richard Williams. He was like, she got the tennis balls and the rackets, because that's back in the day when you had like parks were really parks. So it was like a big park, and you had basketball hoops, and it was a tennis court. And this is like in the hood. This is close to where my grandpa was living. Like there was this big old park. Now today we have parks, they're all small. You might have a tennis court, but it's the hoops are taken down. It's terrible now. But yeah, so my mom tried to get us to play. We had fun, but we were just kind of knocking the balls around, having fun. We weren't serious. Damn it! I should have listened to my mama. I could be a retired tennis player on NBC. Say, wow, that's a great shot. Oh, did you see that by Nadal? What's that love show? Quiet! We're trying to watch tennis. Oh, I wish I was that guy. Damn it! I should have listened to my mama. But yeah, if you like playing tennis, where do you play? What are your thoughts on Nadal, Federer, and Joker? And let's say those 3 aren't your personal favorite. Who do you think is the best male tennis player of all time? But who do you think is the most underrated tennis player of all time? I gotta say Pete Sampras. To me, it's Pete Sampras. Because I think people, when they look at, because right now he's number 4 all time Grand Slams. Like I said, at one point he was number 1, and I think because of Agassi, and I think because it was centered between Agassi and Federer, I think people just kind of, and he was such an unassuming guy. I think people think, oh, he was a great player, but I don't think people really understand how great he was, because he was like technically sound. He's like Barry Sanders, right? Not a lot of rah-rah stuff, but he was just a technically sound tennis player who just didn't talk, did his work, won, shook his hand, and moved on to the next. So shout out to Rafael Nadal, great tennis player. Man, loved by his country. Man, who's next? Like who in men's tennis, who do we got next? Like the women are always fine. Like there's always be another great female tennis player. But as far as guys go, we got guys who are playing well, but they're not household names yet. So who got next? Got the Federer, Joker, and Nadal.